Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on the importance of colour in tarot. So it's going to be part of a series of 3 videos, and each one will be looking at the use of colour in different ways. This one is going to be concentrating on the application of traditional colour theory to tarot, and the next one will be shorter, and that will be the use of astrology, colour and tarot, and the final one will be talking about the use of the colour scales in tarot, which is probably the most complex of the 3. So we take a little bit of a diversion here from the Major Arcana series, which will be coming back shortly, because I've nearly finished the Lovers card now. The Lovers is quite a complex alchemical card, so that's taken a little bit of time to do and simplify down. But anyway, I digress. So we start with the use of colour in tarot in this video. Colour is probably one of the most important features of tarot, because your choice of a tarot pack can actually depend on what you see, how the cards are presented, not just the images themselves and the artwork or the computer design in some cases, but the actual colour and how they're represented, how they intermingle is a very, very important aspect of tarot. And this usually, we usually look at decks intuitively, instinctively. You know, we know immediately whether a deck appeals to us or not, pretty much. So this is a huge area, and I've tried to avoid it for some time because it's not straightforward, as we will see in this video. So to get started, I've looked and I've isolated the 3 primary colours. Because if we're looking at universal concepts, as I try to do, you could say that all colours are derived from the 3 primary colours, which are red, blue and yellow. So what is a primary colour? A primary colour cannot be made by mixing any other colours. So this is your foundation of colour. Everything comes from these 3. And any other colour can be made from a combination of these colours and their derivatives. Is what we'll see in the next section. So moving on from the primary colours there, what do we have next? We have secondary colours, and these are the secondary colours that can be seen down here. And secondary colours are colours that are made through mixing of 2 primary colours. So you've got red and blue, you get violet, yellow and blue, green, yellow and red, orange. So these 3 are secondary colours. We'll see the relevance of these pretty soon. And the next lot of colours that we've got are tertiary colours. So what is a tertiary colour? A tertiary colour can be produced by mixing 2 secondary colours, or, as in this diagram here, a primary colour and a secondary colour adjacent to it on a colour wheel, which we'll see in the next diagram, and these 2 colours being mixed in equal amounts. So if we look at to make that a bit clearer, we've got a colour wheel here. So if we mix the primary colour red with a secondary colour orange, and these 2 are next to each other on the colour wheel, we'll get red-orange. We've got blue here, primary colour, and green, we get blue-green. So these are the tertiary colours. So what are tertiary colours? Yellow-green, blue-green, blue-violet, red-violet, red-orange, yellow-orange. So if we look at this from a spiritual perspective, we can say that the primary colours are the colours that are closest, that are the most basic of colours, and the tertiary colours are less pure in a sense because they've been mixed through the secondary phase, and they're just more and more further away from like the pure source, which would be the three primary colours. And obviously with colour, all colours, if we look at the tree of life in Keta, which is the first Sephiroth, you don't have any colour expression of colour there in that Sephiroth, so even the primary colours themselves are not an expression of pure spirit in a sense, they're just a reflection of it further down. So that is why I've introduced these different levels of colour, because secondary colours are further away from the primaries, and the tertiaries are even further away. So what I want to do with that is apply that to the tetragrammaton here, because the tetragrammaton, I'll just recap what the tetragrammaton is. If you look here, we've got Yod, He, Vav, Vowel here, and final He. This is sometimes pronounced spelled with a W, and that is the name that cannot be spoken of God. It's referenced in the Bible, and it's called Yahweh or Jehovah. It's the four aspects of it here are four reflections of the one God, and it's a representation of, again, how spirit descends into matter, and it gives you that cycle of matter then being reabsorbed into spirit. So this relates to 4 kabbalistic worlds, and we've seen these on the Minor Arcana series for those that have followed that. And the first, or the most pure world, is Absolute. Then you've got Bria, Yetzirah, and Asaya. And those 4 worlds correspond to the 4 suits. So you've got Yod, like the male aspect of God. You've got He, the female receptive aspect of God. Then you've got the son here and the daughter. And these correspond to the 4 suits of the Minor Arcana of the Tarot. So fire is associated with wands, and so is the Axeluth. You've got water, which is cups, suit of cups, and Briar. You've got Yetzirah is associated with air and the suit of swords, and we have the final world, which is Asaya, the bottom world, the most dense, the most physically manifest world, which is associated with pentacles, or as in the Thoth deck, you have got the suit of discs. And as you can see on this diagram here, we've also got the colours, because we've got the red associated with the Yod, that was the highest world. We've got the blue, water, cups, that's sensitivity, air, yellow, and earth, which is green. We could also put that quite happily as brown as well. So you've got these 3 primary colours here, and brown is actually a tertiary colour. I've actually used the colour brown for earth, as we'll see. So that's why I have linked and talked about primary and tertiary colours, because these 3 here are the 3 tertiary colours red representing the suit of wands, blue the suit of cups, and yellow the suit of swords or intellect. So hopefully that gives you a bit of background as to why those suits are represented by those colours. So they are derived from the primary colours here, and I've got brown here, which is a tertiary colour, which is, we miss out the secondary with brown. Why is that the case? I think because if we look at the tree of life, the diagram I want is here. This is a diagram of the tree of life here. Malkut is the earth, and that is separate from the rest of the tree. It's like a little pendulum that swings, and so it's not really, it is obviously connected to the tree of life, but there's also like a more of a separation with Malkut. So if we go into these four worlds here, you've got three primary colours, and we automatically shoot to a tertiary colour in brown in Asaya. It represents that distance that the Hay final is from the rest of the qualities of the Tetragrammaton. The relationship between the vow and the Hay final is a complicated one, because the Hay final is the vow is both the they're like brother and sister, but they're also married. So you have that ambiguous sort of complex relationship between the three. So this also manifests in the colour scheme. I was initially going to call this video Tarot for Beginners, but as you can see now I've scrapped the beginners bit, but hopefully that does give some indication of the esoteric use of colour. Okay, what we'll do now is look at the at 10 colours in detail in the Thoth Tarot, and how the meanings of these 10 colours, which are frequently used in colour theory, apply to the tarot, or how well they actually apply. So we'll have a look at that in the next section. Okay, we'll look at 10 colours now. We'll start with red, and I've brought up this tree of life, and the reason I've done this is that it includes this lightning flash here, which is the order that energy travels down from like the top Sephiroth here, Keta, which I spoke about earlier, and it transcends each of these sort of energy centers, if you like, and it ends up in the lowest of the spheres, which is Malkut down at the bottom there. So the relevance to this, to the colour, would be that if we look at a particular suit, say the wands, we would expect if the colour scheme was working, that you would get more red towards the top, as it was, the energy would be far more pure, and as you transcend down the tree, then it would become far more mixed with more secondary and tertiary colours. So we'll go to the Sea of Wands. Now the qualities that are associated with red are things like health, strength, physical energy, courage, intense emotions, sexuality, aggression, temper, leadership, passion for life, that sort of thing. But if one thing that has actually bears out here is that we've got a lot of red in the court cards here and in the ace. So that red, that purity, the aces represent Keta, which is on the very top of that diagram that I showed you here. So that would be, the ace would be here, the 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and so on. So you get the 10s down here. So we've got red here, we got the Two of Wands, Dominion, and then we move on to orange here, which is a secondary colour, and then you're into the greens. So apart from the court cards and these first two, it really doesn't bear out particularly well. So that it does, you know, as I say, in the court cards and the ace, but its colour scheme is, I guess, lost pretty easily. But then you do have the red here in the swiftness, the Eight of Wands there. With the Rider Waite, you've just got 8 wands flying through the air. This is much more, you have actually got the red, the energy moving out of the cube there. So as I say, I've done all videos on these, and I guess you've got the red in the background here and there, so, and a bit of red on the wand of the Valor. So I guess in some ways, you know, it's not obvious when you first look at it, but you could say yes, there's red at the start and then it peters out rather quickly, but certainly not obvious. And why the court cards are all red when they're one of the most complex of cards, I don't know. I don't know on that. Other examples of red in the tarot would be when I look through the other cards. We've got red on the Ten of Cups, which is satiety, which is to do with being like full, being emotionally like almost over full in a sense, though again that doesn't really bear out with the meaning of the colour red. And we've got the Ten of Swords, which is ruin. You could say that is like energy applied in a destructive manner, so that red there is all being forced through the swords into the central sword there, which is being attacked by the other sword. So I can understand why red is being used in that particular card. You've got, I guess, the Nine of Swords as well. You've got that cruelty and the dripping blood down at the bottom here. For big close-ups of these cards, they're all on my Minor Arcana series videos. In the notes there on my website, there's huge. I'm sorry, these are a bit in low resolution, but I do have the high resolution versions of these. Okay, so we've looked at colour red, and it bears out in some cards and not in others. So we'll move on to the colour blue and the Suit of Cups. So with the colour blue, we have words that describe the colour blue in terms of colour theory are things like being psychic, peaceful, healing, subconscious communication, tranquility, calmness, deep as the ocean, high as the sky, that sort of thing. So it's like a more emotional, intuitive thing, which you see in the High Priestess. Whereas red again is associated very much with the Emperor, and we've done those two cards on the major series. Again, we have this blueness in the court cards, and these court cards are very different to the ones, so again that bears out. You've got the Prince of Cups, who's very fickle, but he's very emotional and intuitive, and even more so the Queen of Cups. With the Ace, you've got this lovely ray of white light, the purity of Keter, which is the first Sephiroth there on the Tree of Life. So you've got the purity of this first Sephiroth here, just pouring into the it's often referred to as the Holy Grail there. And you've got the calmness of this love card here, the blue there. But again, if we look at the rest of the suit here, quickly it just disappears, ever so quick. And I see no further blue here, so with regards to looking at that suit in general, it's really very haphazard. In the major arcana we've got the adjustment card, which is blue, but that's more of like an intellectual card. We'll come to that, I haven't come to that yet. We've got the star, sensitivity and spirituality. I've got them here. So again, you've got the high priestess, blue, intuition, but then you've got this adjustment here, which is very blue, and yet it's blue and green, and yet it's got nothing to do really with sensitivity and intuition. Well, that's not its main focus anyway. And then you got the star here. Well, that is very spiritual, and you can understand why the blues are there. Okay, I think that's red and blue done. We'll finish off with the primary colours by going to yellow. With yellow, they're associated with the suit of swords, being associated with the intellect and air and thoughts. So we can clearly have the blue skies here, which is associated, you can say that's air associated, same here, but you've got yellow in each one of these. But certainly in the rest of the suit, the colour yellow, which represents, if you look at colour theory, it's supposed to represent an intellectual approach, an intellectual balance, confidence, self-esteem, the sun, masculine. You know, we've got the Egyptian god Amen-Ra, the male god associated with the sun and being yellow and obviously male. Goddesses are normally associated with the moon. But again, no, apart from the court cards and a bit on this two of swords, not a great deal of yellow to represent air there at all. And the intellect. Can we look at any other things? Well, again, the yellow is supposed to represent something positive, and yet we've got the strife card here, the 5 of Wands, which is actually quite a negative card. You got the yellow here and the 3 of Wands there, which would tie in. Not a lot of use of yellow in the cups. If we go to the suit of discs, again, obviously yellow is not being used very much, at least not to represent air. So looking at the colour theory and what yellow is supposed to represent, certainly in the Thoth deck, apart from a few of the cards here and maybe here, doesn't seem to bear out very well. Okay, we'll move on to the next section and look at the colour brown. Okay, I think as I mentioned when we're doing the tetragrammaton that I've used the colour brown, which is very much an earthly colour, the same as green. So brown would represent, in terms of colour theory, things like animals, the earth, stability, also stagnation, the material world, also being grounded. And we see our familiar pattern of our brown being very much in this is a suit of discs, very much in the aces and the court cards here. We've been through all of these, and they were very much to do with practical matters, so that is very much in line with the colour theory. But again, this colour theory is very much lost when we look at the rest of the suit there, because brown is barely visible. So we can say that with the use of brown, it is being used in a limited way in terms of the meaning of the card tying in with the theory of colour that we normally see when we look on the internet and in books. Okay, we'll move on to the colour orange next. Okay, fifth colour, we use the colour orange. Orange is normally described as a colour representing a passionate approach to things, drive, activity, ambition, enthusiasm, warmth and being sociable. In the examples that I've chosen, we've clearly got orange here in the Three of Wands, and that's really doing things for our highest good. So I can understand how it ties in with the colour theory definition of orange, and that the activities that we're doing, the ambitions and enthusiasm that we've got, are all applied to something which will be in a very high sense of importance and good for us and for the world in general. But we also see it in the Ten of Wands here, and I guess that's very much in the background there. So maybe it's all been suppressed, that sense of drive and ambition, by all these wands here in the foreground. We've got orange in the Four of Discs here, which this is all to do. Four of Discs is to do with knowing our boundaries. We've got a fort here, a castle. We're looking above, and this is like a desert area here. So I wouldn't have put any direct link to drive and ambition with regards to that, unless you say your ambition is moving out from the boundary to say the sort of structure that you've built, your groundedness here, and if you're crossing over those boundaries of yourself or other people, and you're going into this area here of desert, then your drive, in a sense, and your ambitions are too much. And this can be seen with people that they may ask, constantly push other people's boundaries, so that they put people on their guard, and these people can be quite intimidating. And it's also applied to the self, in that you've not got a stable structure. Your drive and ambition and everything is not being contained properly. So in fact, thinking about that, the colour orange does actually tie in there. I think this is why these videos and doing things on, making your own self-study is so important, because things actually come to you that are not in books, really. The other example I saw of orange is here again in the Five of Cups, disappointment there. And again, you've got quite an angry background there, so again that's implying that the qualities that we associate with orange, which is passion, ambition, enthusiasm, is all being like polluted. This ties in with the theory of the title of the card, which is disappointment. Okay, we'll finish orange and go on to the next colour, which is green. Okay, with green, the things that are associated with green, qualities I should say, would be things like harmony, balance, money, prosperity, fertility, healing as well. If we look at the aura, the green is to do with the heart centre. Things like growth and peace. So we have lots of green in the Ace of Discs, which represents the potential for practical projects, practical things to come and grow. So growth, that's great. 9 of Discs here, we've got green, and that's all about gain, prosperity, mainly financial. It doesn't have to be, it can be material. But again, that ties in with the money and prosperity there. You have green within the 2 swords there, which is to do with peace, and one of the properties of green was balance and harmony, so that ties in there. The other one was the 4 of Swords there, which is truce. So again, there's a certain amount of harmony and balance within that, with the 4 swords there. But the fact that harmony and balance is contained, and in the background you've got all this squiggly, chaotic, sort of energetic background, means that that's truce. It's just like a rest. It's not an ideal situation to be in. It's like a breather. And you can see the difference between these 2 cards, the 2 of Swords, which you've got this lovely peaceful background here, and you've got this chaos in that's been shut out in the 4 of Swords. So with regards to green, we can say that it is used quite well in terms of its meaning in colour theory. So we'll go on to the 7th colour now, which is purple. The colour purple is associated with qualities such as compassion, power, spirituality, spiritual leadership or teaching, psychic abilities and nobility. I would say that this is quite purple here. I initially didn't really see a connection here, but again you've got nobility there, and this card is called Valor, which is, it's like you're fighting a situation against the odds, and it's like fighting a losing battle, but you just keep on going. So if you come for a reading and you get this card, it's like it's bringing up a situation which you feel like you're fighting against all the odds. It's all stacked against you. I guess that's quite a noble thing to do, so that does tie in with that. Spirituality it ties in with as well, because spiritually we're fighting against the materialistic way that the world is. We'll look at a couple of other cards, not to dwell too long. Change. 2 of Discs, change. What's this got to do with the colour purple? Well, the whole of life this card is showing you the whole of life is change, and that is quite a spiritual realization to make, and it is made on deeper and deeper levels the further and further you go on a spiritual path, just what this change and karma and karmic threads, and you work those out as you go through life, and you see them and become more and more detached to them the more you reside in spiritual stuff. So I can see how that ties in with the 2 of Discs. We've also got a fair bit of purple on the or some bits of purple on the 8 of Swords, which is interference there, and that's really shoved in the background, that purple again. Similar to the similar to the here in the background of the 10 of Wands, oppression. So you've got the 8 of Swords there, and that's interference. So things are getting in the way of our spirituality. This card isn't always to do with spirituality, but all of the cards are connected. At the end of the day, it's all representing the spiritual journey in one way or another. So you've got a lot of things in the way of this power, this sense of leadership. you know, our psychic ability, our intuition. So that could be a reason why the colour purple is faded into the background of that card, and you've got all this activity on the front there. So we go on to the next colour, which is grey. Okay, with grey, we don't have a massive amount of grey on the card. Grey is supposed to represent depression, dullness, unsettling things, unsettling situations, or stressful situations. It's difficult to see, but there is grey in this worry card, so the 5 of discs, so that would tie in with the qualities that are normally attributed to grey. Again, the 7 of discs has got very sort of grey, dark atmosphere to it, and 7 of discs is all about stagnation and failure in like your everyday material life, or at least a part of it. So as I say, grey is rarely used in the Thoth deck, but when you actually look at these two cards here, they do have a lot of a grey atmosphere to them, as well as some grey coloration in the discs here and in the background on the 5 of discs. So we'll go on to the penultimate colour, which is white. Okay, with the colour white, again we have to look for this. I've mentioned it already, this beam of light that comes into the Holy Grail on the Ace of Cups here is from Keter, which I should say initially that white is supposed to represent purity of motive, innocence, purification, clarity, the soul, perfection, innocence, and all of that can be associated with the light coming down from Keter here. I guess in the love card here it's coming down in streams here, so that's been shared and grounded in the 2 cups. Other cards where white is significant in relation to that, we'll go to the major arcana. With the Magus here, this is actually like a white background here, and that's the light of Keter. We'll come back to that. And the same with the Hierophant here. We've just not long done the Hierophant, and he's in front of this window here, which is in the background, and that is the light of Keter, or it's the light of the supernal triangle, which is Keter, Binah and Hokmah. So again, they do represent a purification of the energy, because they're on the upper reaches of the Tree of Life. And again, on the lovers here, you've got some white that the Hermit stands before, and again, that is the light of the higher realms. So we can say that white is used in the Thoth Tarot to represent this purity or this spirit, but it's often blocked by a lot of these figures here, because, well, Keter, the purity, if you want to represent Keter, the Sephiroth, then it'll just be a white card, there'll be nothing on it. So obviously these are reflections as the Fool goes through his spiritual journey, so the light's always going to be in the background here, and then you've got all the esoteric principles associated with the card in front of that white light. Okay, we'll move on to the final colour, which is black. Right then, looking at black, this is a bit ambiguous, because it quite often represents negativity, sadness, mourning, loss, guilt, depression, emptiness, darkness, but it can also represent the beginning and end of cycles, the culmination of things, the completion of a cycle. So we look in the Death card here, ruled by Saturn, and obviously death does represent a cycle. So when this comes up in a reading, we're not necessarily talking about physical death of a person. It could be an attitude, a way of life, a relationship. So it does represent the colour black, or the black is used in the death card, and that does tally in with the colour theory that we see in the books there. In other cards, we have Three of Swords there. We've got a lot of black in that. Sorrow, so obviously there's a lot of sorrow in certain situations, and the black is actually reflecting that. It's not really a happy card. Going in the Suit of Cups here, we've got indolence down here, which is like a stagnation of energy. It's opposite to debauch, which is like doing things which are not really in our highest good. But we have all probably been through phases of debauchery. But anyway, with the black, it's stagnation, and that is definitely associated with the colour black. Same here with the black leaves here and disappointment. You've got all this. The cups are dried up because these lilies have dried up. So there's no water flowing through the cups here. You've got this arid situation there in the Five of Cups there. Black can also represent B.O.T.A, which is the third Sephiroth here. This is another application of the colour black, because black, B.O.T.A is supposed to, it's like the feminine principle which gives birth to form. So you've got the male aspect penetrating, and number 2 penetrating the female here, and that's when you get the beginnings of form. So when you get form, you have the beginnings of birth and death, and that's why it is represented as a black sphere on the Tree of Life. And this B.O.T.A is represented in cards such as here, where you've got this black here, and underneath the Magus. So you've got Keter here, and he stands before B.O.T.A there. You've got B.O.T.A in the background here, and also here. And you've got some sort of blackness here to do with change, and again we've said that change is all about birth, death and regeneration, although that might be, I don't know whether that's a really dark purple, but it looks black. And we've got a black shield again down here, and this card, the Knight of Discs, is a very slow, ploddy energy. Okay, so I think that concludes. This is supposed to be like a shorter tutorial, which is why I took a break from the Major Arcana, but it hasn't worked out that way. The next one on astrology is going to be a lot shorter, but anyway, there you have it. I think certainly in conclusion, the colours don't, if we were to limit ourselves just to looking at the tarot cards in terms of colour theory and the Thoth deck, surprisingly you can make a case for it, but it's more complex than that. And as you can see, it doesn't always fit in with every card by any means. So it certainly does not provide a full explanation of how and why colour has been included in the way it has in the Thoth deck. So what we'll do next time is look at colour, astrology and tarot in a much shorter video, I promise you. Okay, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again hopefully. Bye for now.